helping people cope with and overcome life's challenges. This is Life Transformations with Michael Hart, certified Christian counselor and director of Ottawa's Elim Counselling Services.
Hi, this is Michael Hart of Elim Counselling Services, and I want to thank you for being with us on this edition of the Life Transformation Radio Show. This is a show where chains are broken and the lives are transformed. I get calls every week from people who say that they have been touched by something that they have heard on the show, or they have made changes in their life as a result of something that we discussed. And recently at our conference that we had in Cornwall, a number of people came up to me and say that they're listeners of the show and how thankful they are for this show. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. You can find out more about Elim Counselling Services by going to our website at elimcounselingministry.com. Elim is spelled E-L-I-M, counseling with two L's, elimcounselingministry.com. You can call us at 613-699-1677, 613-699-1677. Elim is a professional counseling services that offer professional counseling from a Christian perspective. We offer counseling at a subsidized rate. And so for people who cannot afford to pay the regular rate, we are able to do that through the donations that come into this ministry. So if you have not yet contributed to this ministry, please consider doing so by going to our website and see the means of contributing there. Or you can mail a check to us by going to by mailing it to any of the address that is on our website. So again, thank you very much for joining us for part 2 of the show on professional athletes and spirituality. And again with me in studio is Wayne Tosh. Welcome, Wayne.
Good to be here, Mike.
For those of you who missed the first part of the show, Wayne Tosh is a 2-time Grey Cup winner. Now recently the Grey Cup has been in the air. Ottawa got to the finals, but the Red Blacks got to the final, but they were defeated. But here we have with us in studio a man who won the Grey Cup twice. He was victorious in 1973 with the Ottawa Rough Riders, and again in 1976 with the Ottawa Rough Riders. And he played the position of defensive cornerback, a very important position. And so we are very privileged to have with us here today an athlete of very high caliber who can shed some light on what it's like to be a professional athlete on a team where you become known for your faith, and what's that like being different. If you want to hear more about that part of it, you can listen to the first podcast by going to our website at elimcounselingministry.com. But today we want to continue this discussion, and I wanted to start this discussion with the Grey Cup victories that you had, like the first Grey Cup in 1973 when you won that first Grey Cup. Like, we know that Grey Cup celebration is known for a lot of things that, to say the least, doesn't really square very well with the Christian faith. There is the champagne, the drinking, and for some guys it's going wild and running around with different women and things like that, women who follow the team around. So as a believer in that kind of environment, help the listeners understand how you were able to go through that and how you reconcile those kind of things with your faith.
Yeah, on the team, you're part of the team, and you're expected to do your job to help the team win. And I was very fortunate to be able to play very well in my position. In fact, I was playing a position that is usually filled by an American. And so when a Canadian can play that position, it gives the coaches more flexibility for an American to play in another position. So despite my differences in my beliefs, I was accepted by the players because of my ability to play. And it was really interesting. After winning the Grey Cup in 1973, the players knew that I was a believer and that I didn't drink or smoke. And so champagne was handed out to all of the players for winning the Grey Cup. And there would be a lineup in front of my locker, led by Rudy Sims, wanting to get my bottle of champagne so he could...
So they loved you even more because you were the guy that didn't drink your champagne.
That's
so they would get,
exactly.
They would get your shares.
But it's but at the same time they appreciated your beliefs and where you stood. I can remember on the plane once we're flying out to Winnipeg, and because the football team, the players weigh so much, they put us all together in the middle of the plane to balance the plane so it doesn't go front or backwards. And so
that sounds really scary to me. Like you're in a plane and you're saying to the players, sit in certain positions so that this plane can be balanced. That sounds like a very precarious
if you had it at the front,
situation.
The pilot would have to deal with more weight at the front of the plane.
Oh, so you're talking about not commercial jets here, little small plane.
No, this would be Air Canada.
Really?
Yeah.
So the guys are that heavy that they can actually...
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was, that was back then. I'm sure the technology's
okay,
improved.
because I was just about to say that next time I'm traveling, I would like to know if there are any football players on the plane before I go on. But you're saying back then, maybe not so now.
So I can remember one time where we hit a rough patch and the plane was shaking. And Rudy Sims gets up and in the middle of all this and yells out, "Reverend." He said, "Reverend, you have to say a prayer for us so we can get down safely and this plane doesn't crash."
So it's good to have a reverend on board when the plane is in turbulence, right?
Exactly.
Yes, the reverend is there to help us through times of turbulence.
And we did get down safely.
Good. So that is even more testimony to your faith.
Well,
right?
I think too that they may have had a little bit to drink on the plane, so that happening just was very humorous.
Good. So some people argue that Christianity is for the weak. It's for people who use it as a sign of crutch. So tell us about what you think about that, and did you see yourself as being using Christianity because you were weak, and was it viewed that way by people on your team? How do you see that?
Well, I think it was the opposite. Being a Christian, having God in your life, helped you and strengthened you and gave you confidence. So knowing that I was in God's will, playing football, I felt confident in being able to do the job and meet the expectations of the coaches and the players. And for me, it was a plus.
Amen. So people didn't look at you as being like a soft player. The player was playing the position that if we wanted to be victorious against this team, that's the guy that we are going to target.
Yeah, and I was just one of the guys. I wasn't one of the superstars like Tommy Clements or Conrad Holloway or Tony Gabriel, but one of the players that helped make the team win.
I know you're just being humble here, and this is part of your Christian faith, but I think to be on a winning Grey Cup team, I think you are all superstars to be able to win that Grey Cup, and not only win it once, but to win it twice. I think this must be a testament to how good a player you were to be on a successful Grey Cup team.
Well, you don't appreciate it at the time, but 1976 was the last time that Ottawa has won the Grey Cup.
Yes.
And so that's 39 years ago. So it becomes, you appreciate it more as time goes on.
Absolutely. One of the challenges of professional sport is to strike a balance, to be able to balance life. You know, you have a family at that time, and you are also fully committed to training and to preparing, because I know as a professional athlete you have to put in a lot of time, not just when you're on the field but off the field as well. Wayne, can you tell us a little about how you were able to balance your life?
Well, it was challenging. Back then they didn't pay that much for playing football, and you were allowed to work at a second job. And so my daily schedule would be, I'd be into work at my government job at 7:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. And then I had a half an hour to get over to Lansdowne Park and get ready for football practice. And that went from 4 till 8. So now...
And this was every day?
This was every day.
Wow.
And the pressure of getting there on time was a $50 fine if you were late. So that's a real pressure back then.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it was able to work out. My government job at the time involved me being involved with different cities. So when we travel for football games, I was able to go in and meet with our district people with the government and talk about projects and that kind of thing. So it worked out well. But definitely busy days.
Yes, yes. So you were able to make that work with that kind of schedule and family life as well and work life. You had kids at the time as well?
Yeah,
we were married at the time. Tell me what your family was like at that time.
Well, our oldest was born during that period, and we now have 3, Tim, Amy, and Casey, and we're really blessed. And we're able to get through it all, and busy, but happy.
But I think the caliber of your children today, I think, is testimony that you did manage to do this successfully, because they all turned out to be pretty successful themselves. So you must have done a good job of balancing that and being a good father as well. And I'm sure you had a very supportive wife.
That's right. Having a very supportive wife,
yes.
And being able to fill in when I'm away traveling or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the identity, I know professional sports, a person's identity can become wrapped up in being this cornerback on the other Rough Riders, this person who has won 2 Grey Cups. And so when you go from being in the limelight all the time and having that as your identity to transitioning post-professional athlete years, can you talk a little bit to what that transition is like for you when you go from being known as the person who are being in the limelight to being now outside of the limelight? What is that like for you?
Well, I've always believed that God doesn't take anything away from you, that He doesn't replace it with something better. So when football was coming to an end in 1978, a new church was starting up in Orleans, Community Pentecostal Church, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the original members to help start the church and see it grow to where it is today, a very successful, thriving church in Orleans. So
God was closing one chapter of your life, but opening another chapter.
Exactly.
And when the church was starting up, I know community today, we have maybe Community Pentecostal has about 500 people on a Sunday morning today. What was those early days like? When you say the church was starting up, was it like 100 of people coming?
Oh, it was much less. We started in Convent Glen Elementary School, and there would have been maybe 35 to 50 people. Mm-hmm. And we were known as the church with the professional football players in it, because Jerry Organ and Rod Woodward and myself were all at the church.
Okay, so you had a few members of the Ottawa Rough Riders
in the early days, yes.
Wow, so you must have made quite an influence on these guys by being known as the reverend of the team, to them come into faith.
Well, it's exciting to see men like Jerry Organ and how they've grown in their faith over the years and continue to be in full-time ministry, even to this day with One-Way Ministries.
That must be so rewarding for you to look back and to say, I played a role in helping these men come to faith, and to see what God is doing in their lives today. If you've just joined us, you're listening to the Life Transformation Radio Show. I'm your host, Michael Hart of Elim Counselling Services. And if you're wondering who it is that I'm talking to today, I'm talking to Wayne Tosh, the 2-time Grey Cup winner with the Ottawa Rough Riders. He won the Grey Cup in 1973 and again in 1976. He played the position of defensive cornerback. So Wayne is also a believer, and we have been talking discussing this under this topic of professional athletes and spirituality. And Wayne has been sharing about how his faith helped him in becoming so successful as a professional athlete. And we are now at the point of the show where we're talking about life after professional sports and what God is now doing in his life. So Wayne, can you continue along that trend and just tell the listeners a little bit more about what God has been doing in your life since and how God is using you?
Yeah, with football at an end, and I then was able to do some coaching for my kids. So I coached my two boys with the Orleans Bengals, and during that period of time, we won 2 city championships.
It's amazing.
And our daughter, Amy, was one of the cheerleaders. So it was a family affair, and it was good to see my oldest son, Tim. He went on to play football at McGill, and he played my old position and wore my old number 17.
Wow,
so I was reliving my youth through my son.
That must have been so good to see him develop the same kind of passion and interest in a sport that you're able to coach him. And I'm sure your influence, being able to teach him that position, had something to do with his success as well.
And Jerry Organ and Rod Woodward and I, while we were still playing, we said, let's make something special for the high school kids in Ottawa. Let's have a football game at the end of a week or two of practice, where these kids can learn football skills from the university coaches and the Rough Rider coaches, and be exposed to the potential of going and playing university ball, either in Canada or in the United States. So we started the AIA High School All-Star Football game back in 74 or 75. And that has now been going for 40 years. It has continued.
Still continuing today. Wow.
4,000 kids have gone through the camp. They've had an opportunity to go to the next level in football. They also had an opportunity to participate in the pregame devotionals. So we would have speakers come in and talk to them and share their faith and where they stood with Christ.
Well, this is just such a testimony of what faith does in us, because you could have become self-centered and closed, but I think as a result of your Christian faith, you wanted to give back to the community, and you were thinking not just of yourself, but of the kids, and as a result of that, you ended up influencing over 4,000 children of
in 40 years, at least 100 kids.
So you have now a tradition that has been well established in Ottawa.
Exactly. Many have gone on to play college football.
I think this is so very important for people to understand the history of this, Wayne, because I think a lot of people today, they see this and they view it in a totally secular light. And they don't understand that Christian faith was behind the genesis of something that is become such a part of sport in this society, and have influenced so many lives who have gone on to play in big leagues around.
Yeah. When I came up to Ottawa in 1967 out of high school, they had a 2 or 3 day practice schedule that was put on by the Rough Riders of potential players that could go on and play college football and then come back and play professionally for the Rough Riders. But it wasn't, it was only a couple days. You didn't learn much. And Jerry, Woody, and I wanted to make this something special for the kids. So even if they don't go on and play football at the next level, the practicing, the pregame devotional, being exposed to college coaches, and the discipline and everything that it takes to play and win a game was passed on to them, and so it's exciting to see that this continues, and a lot of kids have had an opportunity. Was it a hard sell in the beginning? Like when you
when this became begin to germinate in your mind, and you're saying, I have this idea that this could be done to benefit kids. Was this hard to sell to the powers that be to make it happen?
We had to convince the two universities, Ottawa U and Carleton, and the Sooners to be involved. Their coaches were very important because they had the skills to pass on to these kids that needed to learn these skills. And so what we would do is we would have Ottawa U and Carleton 1 year coaching each of the two teams, the East and the West. And the next year we would have the Sooners and Carleton, and then the Sooners and Ottawa U, and then back to Ottawa U and Carleton. So we had 3 groups to draw from. So kids that weren't going on to university could continue and play football with the Sooners here in town.
That's very good, and I think it shows your heart that you wanted to give back, and we'll talk a little bit more about how God has been using you to impact kids in another way. But I just want to welcome listeners who might just be joining us. If you've just joined us, you're listening to the Life Transformation Radio Show. I'm your host, Michael Hart of Elam Counselling Services, and I want to thank you for listening to this edition of the Life Transformation Radio Show. We're discussing professional athletes and spirituality, and with me in studio today is Wayne Tosh, who is a 2-time Grey Cup winner with the Ottawa Rough Riders. He won in 1973 and 1976, and Wayne is a believer, and Wayne has talked about how his faith helped him in his triumph in winning the Grey Cup in those 2 years. But we're now been talking a little bit about post-Grey Cup, post-professional athlete life, and what God has been doing in his life. Before we continue that, I just want to give out the contact information again in case you want to contact us. You can call us at 613-699-1677. We can also be reached by contact information on our website at elimcounselingministry.com. Elim is spelled E-L-I-M, counseling with 2 L's, elimcounselingministry.com. And again, I want to thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the show. And so you were talking about life post-professional athlete. You talked about what God did in your life regarding the reaching out to those children who were desirous of playing professional football. Talk to me a little bit about other ways in which God has been using you to reach out to kids in a broader sense, because I think it's very amazing what God has done in your life since.
It is. God, it's really exciting to see what God can do. And I worked with the federal government, and I was in 2 exciting jobs, one from 1993 to 2000 when I ran the Community Access Program. And it was, I was in Industry Canada, and the plan was to get Canada to be the first connected nation in the world, with all our schools and all our libraries. So the federal government put a plan of action into place called Community Access Program. And at one point we had 8,800 sites available where in schools and libraries where people could go in to the library and use computers, learn how to use computers, and access the internet. So we were by 2000, April of 2000, we had all of our schools, 15,800 and 3,400 libraries, all connected to the internet.
That's amazing growth.
Second job following up on that was the Computer for Schools program, which I was blessed to be able to manage and run for 6 years before I retired. And that is a program that isn't well known, but is having a significant impact across the country. We take used computers from the government and the private sector, have kids learn skills and how to fix them, and then we put them into the school system. And since 1993, we've put 1.4 million computers into the public school system in Canada. That is unbelievable.
That's amazing. Talking about using resources wisely, use computers from the government being sent to school and kids being able to learn how to use those computers. I think that's just an awesome program. And the scope of it to me is mind-boggling. Talking about 1.4 million children being
1.4 million computers
being
you can go every school and library in your city, including Ottawa, will have computers from the program if they wanted them and asked for them.
So that sounds great as it is, but I understand that it took on a bigger scope for you.
We
have about 3 more minutes. So can you talk
it's really exciting
about what else has happened as a result of that?
Some developing countries, in Kenya in particular, it was a God moment where a Christian brother and myself in 2002, while I was still running the Computers for School program, connected in Atlanta. We started communicating and talking about getting a program going in Kenya, and it has happened. And now Kenya has become the model for Africa. They've put 300,000 computers, they've refurbished 300,000 computers in 10,000 schools. They've trained 100,000 teachers, and the reach of young people is 15 million young people now have access to technology that wouldn't otherwise have it.
That's amazing. You're talking about 15 million people.
That's almost half the population of Canada.
Wow, that's such an amazing accomplishment, amazing development in that part of the world.
And led by a Christian believer, a man by the name of Tom Musilli.
Right.
And it's exciting how the Lord is using us. And there are opportunities in other countries as well. We're very close to getting pilots going in 2 states in Nigeria. And Kenya is having an influence on 8 to 10 countries in Africa as well. So this is happening. It's exciting.
It's growing, and the potential is endless.
Is endless.
This could just keep going from countries to countries.
And the Lord keeps sending contacts and people along my path to help facilitate this and get things started. So
this is just an amazing testimony, Wayne, of what God can do with us when we ask Him to come alongside us. And far from being weak people who need a crutch, we are actually influencers of society, people who can make great change. So you talk about your influence as a football player on your team, your influence post-team in starting a church in our community that's now a very vibrant church. But your reach, your scope, your influence is now extended across the world. And I think this is just so amazing. Wayne, we're out of time today. I wish I could continue much longer, but thank you so much for you taking the time off to be with us on this show today. And may God continue to bless you and bless the tremendous work that you're doing.
It's good to be here and be able to share with everybody.
It's good having you. And until next time, this is your host, Michael Hart of Elim Counselling Services. Thanking you very much for listening and praying that God would bless you in all your relationships and keep you sound in mind and pure in heart.